the tipping point really was. If anyone knows when this really became solid in our industry. Does anybody know that? What year or years? Probably some of you do. But what happened with this particular technique is that in the 90s, it kind of just started out, hair painting. It actually came from France. So the French always, being on top of the latest and greatest. And it started in the 90s, but the tipping point was really the ombre. Because it allowed you to kind of not have to get so close to the scalp. And it also kind of introduced the smudging technique that some of us do. So with that, it gave way to a safer environment to work in, basically, like not so worried that some of the traditional initial hair painting techniques that you were going to have a hard time. For me, I know in the beginning when I first started doing this, and maybe some of you had a similar situation, but in the beginning I had a lot of like where it would bleed through to the bottom, and I had all kind of crazy splotches across, and I just hadn't gotten my technique down. I hadn't gotten the fluidity of the technique down, which is why it takes 10,000 hours to master a technique. So I'm definitely not a master yet. I have not done this for 10,000 hours. Close, but not quite there. But it takes 6 months just to, well, or that you can own. So it's practice, practice, practice. And this wasn't around when I first started doing hair. This technique wasn't really a technique that anybody did. So now it is, and I love it because it's very freehand. It's very like where you place it is where you're going to see it. So again, I'm just working through my V section. So I'm painting really on the surface. I think that's what, I probably haven't said it yet, but it's the most important thing when you're doing this is I'm pulling really tight on this section, like really tight. And then I'm just painting the top part of the surface. So here on the sides, if I wanted to add a little bit more, I would go back through and kind of do one of these and blend those together. If I see a spot where I don't like how it's kind of developed, or I want to see that separation a little bit, I just sometimes will use my tail comb and kind of do that to sort of break it up. Can everybody see that? And then it kind of gives like a better look. But practice, 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 practice. I mean, that's the only way you're going to really get good at anything. And I love this industry. I love doing hair. I love having these great opportunities to share. And this is why I thought it'd be fun to share balayage, because to be honest with you, when we first started doing it, I kind of struggled, but I was like, hey, I'm gonna do this anyway because everybody else is. And then I realized over time that I developed how it works for me. And I think that's really important to point out, is that my technique is from seeing so many other amazing artists' techniques, and watching them and learning from them and trying to emulate them in some way. But some things didn't work for me, like the board. I just couldn't get comfortable with the well and the board and the things. So I said, how about just a foil? So I have something to wipe it on, because honestly, I did a lot of, like in the beginning, wiping my hands and just keep it going, wiping my hands and keep it going. So introducing the foil has made it a lot neater. Can I use any type of brush? That is an excellent question, my friend Ingrid. So let me just show you. I love the Wella brushes. I'm actually using a Clairol brush right now. So I'm using a Clairol brush, and I have a Wella brush, and I also have an actual like hair painting brush. And what I use this for is if I feel like it needs a little bit of softening, I'll just go through with this regular paintbrush. You can use a clean tint brush too to do this. And I'll just blend it out a little bit. If I think that it needs a little bit softer blend there, I'll go ahead and use that. So you can use, I think, whatever brush works for you, whatever makes you comfortable. What I do with the Clairol brush is I take the color sort of on the edge of the brush and I use it very vertically. So that's kind of how I utilize those brushes. And the salon people say, what brush do you use? What brush do you use? And it's, I use the Clairol brush for everything. Honestly, we have the best brushes. Am I right? Anybody who has one, you know we do. So, okay, so I'm just moving up the head now, a little bit here. So again, I got to a point, let me show you, where the head across is getting really, really wide. It's probably the widest part of the head. So I'm just gonna turn it back here so you can see that. So we're at the widest part of the head again, and I have another like V section. I have another really nice vertical line here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just kind of gonna go through it. This also, like, what I like about this little section is that it's really nice because the underneath is kind of in a V anyway, so it really helps to have you avoid any of the color getting on any of the other hair, any of the lightener. So I'm just gonna turn it a teensy bit so I can see it. Let me see, this section I'm actually gonna just take as one section. I'm not gonna break it into two, but I'll probably go up with my points. I always start out making a V. I do not know why I feel the need to do that, but I always do. I think maybe that's one of the first like technique things I learned was to make a V. And so I continually do that. It makes me feel comfortable when I start by making a V. And then if I want to take another point in the middle, then I'll just go in and do that. But like your stroke has to become comfortable because it's very different to use your applicator brush when you're doing this versus doing a highlight versus doing, or a traditional highlight, I should say, with foils, or when you're doing like even a color, like an overall color. So I'll just go up a little bit more here. Still holding really, really tight tension. But saturation is really important. If this dries out or I don't have enough product on here, we all know what's going to happen. And that is not much. So we want to make sure that the color is really going to develop. And I grabbed a new foil. So periodically I'll just get a new one if I think there's getting too much lightener on it. So then I'm just going to go through and paint. So it's very visual. I follow the method of making the V section in the back like this, and when I get up the head, I make the smaller V. But as I get into it, I kind of like, oh, I think I need to put a little here or a little bit there. So the 40 volume developer, I know everyone's like, oh, that's such a high volume developer, but with Kaleidocolors specifically, and we have 3 Kaleidocolors, by the way. I showed you guys, I'm using the clear, but we also have a violet and we have a blue. Those are tonal powder lighteners. The clear has no tone at all. So this might be something that you want to tone afterwards. When you see the ones I have pre-done, none of them have been toned. They've only been toned with this wonderful product, which no blonde can live without, and that is Shimmer Light Shampoo and Conditioner. That's it. So if you don't want to use 40 volume, you do not have to. By all means, start with 10 if you like. We have 10, we have 20, we have 30, we have 40. If you're slow or you talk a lot when you do hair like I do, I might start with 10 or 20 and then work my way up. So even if I wanted to refreshen the mixture, I would do the same. So moving up the hair, so we just did that middle V section. So now I'm going to take another big V because I'm almost getting done like with the back. Yeah, there we go. Sorry if my arm was in the way. So again, I'll end up with a little V there. So I'm almost to the top of the head. And after I do this section, I'm going to switch over to the sides because you kind of get the gist of the back. I'm hoping you get the gist of the back. Because I want to show you how I work the sides and then also how I do the front pieces. I think that's really important. And I also have 2 pre-dones I want to show you. So I thought it'd be a lot of time, but it's really not. Anyway, so these are my last 2 back sections because I want to get into showing you guys the sides. So again, if, you know, back pushing makes you more comfortable, or if you have a certain type of hair that's really fine, or they don't have a lot of hair, I would do like a little bit of back pushing at the top. Not too much, and you don't want to paint in the back pushing. I always start out making these sort of V sections. It's just my method. It's just how I like to do it. And if I want to go up, I always start with a V and then I'll put one in between there. Yeah, I guess I'll do this one too. Mostly because we're getting like towards the top of the head. So you can see the blend is like really soft. And again, if you want to use like an extra brush and you want to soften it even more towards the top, you can do that. This is my little paintbrush. And then I use just a foil on the bottom instead of a board. And I just gently sort of paint onto the foil and then I let it go. And then I'm gonna go over here to my last section over here. And then I'll circle back around when I'm not on camera and get all of it, but I wanna show you guys how I do the sides. How long does it take you? How much can I charge for it? Those are very excellent questions. Yeah, 602. So how long does it take? Well, this probably would take me, if I did the whole entire head and I wasn't talking, probably about 45 minutes. It depends on how long their hair is, how much hair they have, what are my subpartings, like how far in between. If you just did like 10 sections or 14 sections, you'd get it done really, really quickly. So that's a good question because I think the charge for balayage, I'm in Culver City, California, and we charge a lot of money here for it. I think that the average starts at $70. That's kind of what I looked up on the internet. But I would say that we start about $150. That's where I start. And then it kind of goes up from there. But, you know, the more experience someone has, or the better known they are for balayage, or if you've seen their balayage on Instagram, those people are going to gravitate towards you if you've got a good balayage game, if you've got a good hair painting game. And if that's the case, like, you charge what you feel you're worth. So I think that's what most hairdressers should do. We should charge what we're worth. And if you're, you know, somebody who takes a lot of pride and is very educated, and you know, you should be charging appropriately. Someone said, can I use this technique for Asia black hair? You can use this technique for all hair. If you're talking about, like, if I have a texture that isn't straight, can I still do this? Most definitely. You might be pulling your sections a little bit differently. I would say that I tend to, I'll show you on my next section that's clear, I'll show you what I do if I'm working on extremely curly or textured hair. So that's going to be my last section there. So I can show you guys some other things. But I do want to show that for this right here. If I was going to do it on like black hair or very, very textured, wiry, crazy hair, I'm going to probably do more of like a straight section like this, where I'm just going to pull that curl out. I'm going to take my product and I'm just going to paint on the top. I'm going to paint all the way down through to the bottom. And that's how I do it if I have hair that is very, very curly, or a lot of dense hair, or a really like a zigzag sort of texture to the hair. So someone said, Cap, can I use it on my, are you saying my hair? Yes, you can use this on your hair, Cap. Next time we do your hair, we'll do it. Do you cut the hair before you balayage? Also a really, really good question, because this was one of my lessons early on in this process. And it was that I had a girl who, we didn't really talk about how much she was going to cut off. And then I made this really, really beautiful blonde ends and this beautiful balayage. And then we ended up cutting off more than I needed to mix color for. So it's really a good idea during your consultation to make sure that you do know what the hairstyle at the end is going to be. But with all good lessons, you learn them hopefully only one time, and then you move on and you can apply what you've learned to that lesson. So now I'm going to go into the sides. So I talked about the fact that looking at the front of her hair, this is where the hair was parting. I don't know if you've ever had someone that has such a strong part that you're not going to, there's no getting around it. And if they wear their hair to their parting, that's where I want to see the color. So when I go through the sides, I kind of do the sides and the top the same. I start to incorporate this section back here when I get to about this point. So when those two intersect, this crown section becomes part of my top section. So I kind of just do the same thing. I kind of go in with diagonals when I do around the face as well. And I try to push everything towards the back. So if I do, like a lot of times I will do a little back pushing here, and if I'm working on an angle and I'm wanting the lightener to kind of follow this direction, like lightest and then kind of flowing to the back, if I do any back combing, I do it the same way. So I'll just back comb in the same direction that I'm pressing my angle. So I'm going to go ahead and do this section right here. So I start at high and I kind of sweep like across when I do it. So I sweep across, kind of like it's going back and flowing away from the face. That's sort of how my approach is. Occasionally I will pull it up because some people like it here. You can see that part. And if you wanted to do that, you can. You can paint under here. You can paint this whole piece if you like, if you want that kind of coming back. And there's nothing wrong with that. And this is where I might use my saran wrap or a cotton or something. So it's not on their skin, it's not on their face. I definitely don't want that. So that's where I might use some cotton. And if they want it like more saturated or more blonde looking in the front, it also will be a little bit more heavy-handed there as well. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to switch brushes. Because if your brush gets dirty, just get a new brush. I keep a few on my tray so that I can trade them out if I need to. Okay, so getting into our next section. I'm just going to keep going up in this fashion. I'm going to keep taking diagonals towards the back. Could you do the V sectioning here on the front? Absolutely, you could. What I like about balayage is they're really, it's the end result that's important. So if you have a different way of doing it that gets you to a beautiful balayage end result, then that's definitely something you want to practice. Do you paint a V on the underside around the face as well? I don't really paint a V on the underside. If I pick it up, I kind of will paint from the top to the bottom and sort of brush through. I'll show it again on this section, how I did it. But I keep my tension fairly low except for when I have to turn it over. So I'll start on the top and I'll start painting this section. So I'm doing the V, brushing towards the bottom. And then if I want, I'll just pick it up a little bit and I will brush underneath. But mostly keeping towards the top section. So I'm just kind of using that top part of my V and then